So what's the deal with gay marriage, and why is there no such thing? First of all, marriage serves a number of purposes, and it's not clear if gay marriage serves any of the same purposes. So it is a family structure. It's part of a reproductive strategy. Gay people are not reproducing. So there's that. And the value of marriage as a family structure or a reproductive strategy is that kids do better when they're in a home with both of their biological parents. And this is because biological parents have a direct incentive, an evolutionary incentive, to invest in their own children who carry their own genes. That's an evolutionarily stable strategy. That's a behavior, an adaptive behavior that's rewarded by natural selection. And so they have a strong incentive to invest in their children. And we can see with step parents, for example, that step parents are much more likely to abuse, much more likely to neglect, and they don't invest as much in stepchildren. So that's a pop culture trope, the evil stepmother or the evil stepfather, right? That's a staple of fairy tales and pop culture and everything else, but it's also borne out by the facts, like it's measurable. So that's an example where a prediction from evolutionary psychology is found to be consistent, completely consistent with all the available evidence. So that's one reason. You want families where you have two biological parents raising children together, because that produces the best outcomes for those children and for the society. And if you're not accomplishing that, or if you're encouraging or permitting other arrangements, then those are suboptimal. And so that's at best, like a luxury. Permitting that is a luxury. But during hard times, it's not a luxury, because you can't afford suboptimal outcomes when you're in conflict or competition, intense conflict or competition with other groups or other societies or other countries. So that's never a luxury you can afford forever. So what else? Marriage represents a compromise between the reproductive strategies of males and females and the sensibilities of males and females. So, males and females don't have the same preferences. They, if they had their druthers, they wouldn't necessarily do the same things. I think, we've pretty much concluded that, we've demonstrated conclusively that if you give women the option, they're going to choose promiscuity plus rent-seeking. Promiscuous, lascivious behavior. I think that's how you say that. With many men and offspring with many men, plus, hitting up the tribe or the community for support. That's what women choose to do, and that's now what 30% of white women and 50% of Hispanic women and 70% of black women actually do. Since we've given them the vote and since we've given them the option, that's increasingly what women are doing. That's their preferred reproductive strategy, if you will. And I think the preferred reproductive strategy for men would probably have to be polygyny, harem building. Right? That's kind of a typical male fantasy. So, superficially some similarities, but also a lot of differences between those two strategies. And they're not the same strategy. They have some similar outcomes in some ways, like most of the women end up with a few of the men, the higher status men, the more desirable men, but they have some differences too, like polygyny enforces female exclusivity in order to establish paternity, but promiscuity doesn't. So, so what's the compromise between those different strategies or different preferences. And one compromise is monogamous marriage according to assortative mating. And really the advantage of that arrangement is it permits the privatization of a woman's rent-seeking tendencies. And so her rent-seeking tendencies become concentrated on one man, and that man can evaluate whether the costs she imposes on him or the demands she seeks from him, whether those are worth the value she provides. And he has some means, at least traditionally, of holding her accountable for providing sufficient value to warrant her cost. And so that's calculable if that arrangement is privatized, one man, one woman. She's doing her rent seeking off of him and providing some services and values to him in return. That's calculable. That man can decide if she's worth what she costs, because he's looking at the sum total of costs and benefits, and it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. She's worth it. Alright, but it becomes much harder to do accounting when you just have women running loose, seeking to impose costs willy-nilly, using the franchise or, by whatever other means. And there are many others. That's not the only way. Use your imagination. So, you have a privatization of women's rent-seeking tendencies. Men are basically taking one for the team. They're taking on a woman. They're taking responsibility for a woman so that she's not running loose, causing all sorts of other trouble. And gay marriage doesn't do that. You either have two women who are still probably going to cause trouble for everyone else, or you have two men who are not taking on that duty or that responsibility. So that purpose isn't served by gay marriage. So the family purpose isn't served, the compromise between the sexes and the privatization of female rent-seeking tendencies isn't served. And it's not, a family is a corporation, let's say, for one of its purposes is to accumulate capital and transmit it intergenerationally. Well, a same-sex marriage is a partnership for the purposes of pooling resources and sharing costs to increase consumption. It's not about savings or accumulation or intergenerational transfer. It's about economizing on costs to increase consumption. Fundamentally different purpose. So, it's just not serving any of the purposes we think of marriage as serving, and therefore it's not a form of marriage. It's something else. And we do offer benefits and we offer status to marriage, social status and moral status, and we offer benefits. Let's say employers offer benefits to married people and their children, and their tax benefits and other stuff. So there are various ways in which it's subsidized because it is a valuable institution and it produces social benefits of various kinds. And so it's an okay thing to subsidize. That's an efficient thing to do, because we want those benefits. We want those those functions to be fulfilled. But if you just have same-sex marriage, which is basically about indulging the feelings and seeking the same status that an institution, is accorded without fulfilling the basic functions of that institution, then that's kind of a little bit fraudulent. That's, that's seeking status that you're not willing to fulfill the conditions for receiving. And, it's not clear why we need to subsidize that, why we might want to subsidize that. Some people have posited that maybe if you let gay people, marry, then they'll settle down and not be so degenerate and promiscuous. But, I mean, it seems like, first of all, not many of them go that route at all. And second of all, the ones who do have kind of a different definition of, let's say fidelity or chastity than straight people do. So it's not clear that they're even settling down that much. And ultimately, I think we lost on gay marriage because we had been letting straight people get gay married for several generations prior. Like, they weren't getting married to fulfill the basic functions of marriage, which are family and offspring and, accumulating capital and privatizing the rent-seeking tendencies of a woman, or negotiating a compromise between male and female priorities. They weren't doing that. It was just about, fifis and love and romance and all this other literary crap that has been built up around it. So, we were letting straight people get gay married, and that's probably why we lost the gay marriage battle. But it's not really a form of marriage. It's not the same thing as marriage. There's no reason to subsidize it or accord it the same status or the same benefits as marriage. So, it's a luxury. It's a form of conspicuous consumption that we're allowing it to go on for right now. And, as soon as circumstances become a little bit more dire and we can't afford so much frivolous nonsense, it's going to evaporate. It's going to go the way of the dodo bird, and it's not going to last. Marriage is a fundamental institution for any society, and a certain amount of conservatism is warranted because its exact form and structure has a lot of far-reaching and sometimes non-obvious consequences. The nuclear family, for example, in Northern Europe may be why that was the site of the Industrial Revolution. There are a couple reasons for that. The nuclear family is extremely productive because it enforces the requirement of financial independence before reproduction. So it encourages people to produce economically. And also, the nuclear family doesn't come with a large network of extended family relations. At least not close extended family relations. You don't maintain close relationships with the huge network of extended family. So you don't have those people to rely upon for supplying various goods and services that you need or want. So you go into the marketplace and you create efficient markets and institutions to engage in production and exchange. And so you get a market economy. And that economy can be high trust because you have normative outbreeding. So the country becomes outbred and homogenous, and so everybody's at least distantly related, and so you can just kind of treat everybody as kin, and it works because you actually are, at least to an extent. So, a lot of far-reaching consequences, a lot of non-obvious consequences. Oh yeah, and also because the nuclear family, kids are going out and establishing their own lives once they come of age in their own households, then you get a mobile labor force that can move to urban accumulations of capital. And so all of those things contributed to the Industrial Revolution. So very far-reaching consequences, very non-obvious. And, it's not clear that same-sex marriage is going to have any kind of far-reaching benefits, and it'll probably have some far-reaching costs. And, there's not any instance recorded where a civilization collapsed from, failing to accommodate homosexuals enough. But there are plenty of instances where civilization collapsed due to degeneracy and licentiousness and immorality. So, it's like downside risk, but no upside. So, it's probably going to go away for all those reasons and others. It's probably going to go away because it's not a real thing and it doesn't fulfill real functions.